Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating, highly structured worldview. We're looking at the teachings and writings of the guide Xu Feng. He's the founder of Life Qianyuan. Specifically, we're unpacking a text of his called The 18 Bottom Lines to Be a Human. Now, we're not here to judge or endorse this philosophy. Instead, we're just going to take an objective look at exactly how this text constructs its framework for human behavior and ultimately spiritual fulfillment. It's like a highly regimented architecture of morality, and we're going to see exactly how it's built.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a look at this poetic hook right at the very beginning of Xu Feng's text. It says, "Butterfly flock around when flowers are blossoming. Tao is generated when principles is set up." It's a gorgeous image, right? But it actually serves a super strict structural purpose here. The text is arguing that just like a deep root naturally creates thick branches, setting up firm principles is what actually generates the Tao, or the ultimate way of the universe. In this philosophy, you basically can't reach those lofty spiritual heights without cementing the ground floor first.
And that ground floor, well, it's defined by what the text calls bottom lines. But we really need to understand just how severely this term is being used here. In everyday conversation, a bottom line might just mean like a basic standard. But in Life Qianyuan doctrine as laid out by Xu Feng, a bottom line is an absolute, non-negotiable behavioral boundary. The text is explicit. Those who break through these bottom lines won't just be considered, bad citizens. They will literally be regarded as demons and ghosts with evil spirit. So yeah, it's a zero-tolerance spiritual boundary.
To make sense of all this, here's our thematic blueprint for the 18 bottom lines. First, roots, authority, and order. Second, revering God and nature. Third, integrity and social duty. Fourth, boundaries of personal freedom. And fifth, the ultimate spiritual goal.
All right, Section 1, Roots, Authority, and Order. This is all about establishing the baseline.
So, the very first three rules anchor a person directly to their origins and earthly authority. Rule 1 dictates absolute obedience to parents, basically comparing them to the sky and earth that nurture us. Rule 2 forbids humiliating your ancestors, stating that severing this root actually draws the wrath of heaven. But it's Rule 3 that introduces this really sweeping view of authority. Never insult the king. The text asserts that human society having a leader is simply a principle of heaven. It explicitly notes that whether a leader is lifetime or intern, moral or immoral, talented or just commonplace, they are an arrangement of the way of heaven and absolutely must be respected.
Moving on to Section 2, Revering God and Nature. Let's look at the cosmic connection.
Rule 4 demands absolute humility and reverence toward what it calls the greatest creator. And what's really fascinating here is the specific reasoning Xu Feng provides. It's based entirely on human ignorance. The text points out that we know pretty much nothing about the vastness of the universe or what it calls the 36-dimensional space. It even points inward. It claims there are 18 inner body contents beyond our conscious control. Think about it, like why we dream, where our subconscious hides, or the exact track of our life and death. Because of this profound ignorance, the text argues that any lack of reverence or any arrogance just makes a person look like an ignorant fool.
Now, this reverence extends deeply into the natural world, but man, it has very strict spiritual borders. If you look at Rules 7 and 17, the environmental ethics are just incredibly meticulous. You are strictly forbidden from destroying a bird's nest or a mammal's den, and you're instructed to take care of nature the same way you would embrace a lover. Pretty poetic, right? But then, on the flip side, Rule 11 mandates a total rejection of superstitious activities. You cannot participate in fortune-telling, telepathy, or even what the text specifically calls extraterrestrial groups or angel groups. So nature is to be deeply revered for sure, but mystical speculation, that is entirely rejected as heterodox doctrine.
Okay, Section 3, Integrity and Social Duty. This covers exactly how to act in society.
Honesty is absolutely paramount here. Rule 5 states that disregarding the truth is illegal and perverting the law. But Rule 13 takes it a massive step further by equating fraud directly with a demoniac nature. According to this, to commit fraud is to literally create demons. And Xu Feng provides a really specific list of forbidden fakes here. Bogus diplomas, adulterated foods, phony money, and even pretended feelings. You can't fake how you feel. And as Rule 14 states, once a promise is made, it absolutely must be fulfilled, even if it costs you your life.
Tucked within these social duties is Rule 6, which strictly forbids bullying vulnerable groups, like widowers or orphans. The text does note its belief that these people's fates might be the result of past faults or retribution, but it insists that it is never ever an excuse to bully them. What is truly distinct here, though, is the totally eclectic blend of historical figures the text cites as champions for these groups. It states that lifting vulnerable people from suffering is exactly what figures like Jesus Christ, Buddha Sakyamuni, and Mao Zedong struggled for all their lives. It's framed as the ultimate mark of human conscience.
So the crucial point is how these grand concepts actually translate into your daily life. Rules 8, 9, 15, and 16 outline practical, everyday duties. You have to make a living by your own labor and creation. You must respect every single teacher you've ever had, literally from your kindergarten instructor to whoever teaches you basic life skills. And Rule 16 mandates loving your homeland. It explicitly states that no matter how ugly you might think your nation is, or how critical you are when you're at home, you must never demonize your nation in front of others. Doing so, it argues, strips you of your personality and the respect of everybody else.
That brings us to Section 4, Boundaries of Personal Freedom. Let's look at the limits of liberty.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Rule 10 sharply divides society to define the limits of human association. It actually forbids joining any religious or political organizations. On the left side here, the text paints ordinary people as simple, kind, and observant of traditional decorum. But on the right, it equates followers of demons with political and religious factions, describing them as treacherous and cunning. The text goes so far as to state impartially that while government is a necessary result of structure, various political or religious parties are, and I quote, just like tumors growing in the body human society.
But freedom is also strictly defined in super-mundane, day-to-day interactions. Rule 12 protects privacy, equating the exposing of secrets to digging up ancestral graves. No unannounced visits, no candid cameras. Then you have Rule 18, which emphasizes that, yes, everyone has freedom, but you absolutely cannot exercise yours at the expense of someone else's. And I love how the text grounds this lofty philosophy in incredibly relatable terms, like ignoring public hygiene, that deprives others of a clean environment. Talking too loudly or playing your TV at a high volume, that deprives your neighbors of their freedom to enjoy a peaceful atmosphere. It's very practical.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the ultimate spiritual goal, the House of Life.
Xu Feng concludes the text by bringing us right back to the architectural metaphor we discussed at the very beginning. He writes, "To build a house requires a sound foundation, while to be a man also requires a sound foundation in mind." These 18 rules aren't presented as just a list of polite suggestions. They are intended to be the literal, rock-solid bedrock required to construct a valid human existence.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the final spiritual promise. The text lays out a very clear progression. Step 1, you must strictly adhere to those 18 bottom lines. By doing so, Step 2 naturally kicks in. You generate great virtue, integrity, and real spirit, which ultimately leads to Step 3, where the individual is able to stand firmly between heaven and earth, becoming an integral part of nature. By securing the bottom lines, the text promises that one can perfectly align with the track of the Tao.
So we've unpacked the exact architecture of Zhui Feng's 18 bottom lines, from respecting kings and parents all the way down to monitoring the volume of your television. It presents this really fascinating paradox, a highly regimented zero-tolerance rulebook that's ultimately designed to achieve ultimate harmony and unity with the universe. And that leaves us with a pretty compelling question to ponder. Can a strict set of absolute boundaries truly pave the way to ultimate spiritual freedom? Or do such rigid lines fundamentally restrict the messy complexities of the human experience? Thank you for joining this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.